I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. The laugh is real. The only thing that's fake are the Chicago Bears' aspirations to be a real deal championship contending NFL franchise. That's the only thing that's fake here. Because how else could you explain this news? And you know who I blame for everything? You know who I really blame? I blame my pops. That Phil Jackson look-alike mofo, Peter Arnold. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Pete. You're the one that got me into the Chicago Bears. I started watching the Bears. I want to be just like my dad. And I'm going to hang out with my dad. And we're going to watch Bears football. He's the one that got me into it. He's the one. It's all your fault, Pops. And I hate you for it. And I hope all of you reevaluate what led you, and more importantly, who led you into becoming a Chicago Bears fan. And I hope you send them all the hate you possibly can, because they've earned it. They've deserved it. And if they're your family, they deserve it even more, because you don't get to choose your family. And they did it to you anyway. So clearly they didn't care about you, and clearly they didn't love you. So fuck them. I just saw a team fire a head coach that won a Super Bowl 3 years ago with a backup quarterback. Ironically enough, Nick Foles. But the Chicago Bears, on the heels of back-to-back 8-8 seasons, said, sign me up for another one of those. Oh boy. This time you found a different scapegoat. It's Chuck Pagano. I mean, he did wonders to take an elite defensive unit and turn him into average in 2 years. That's chucking it up pretty bad, if you ask me. But imagine thinking that he's the problem. Imagine thinking that he's the only issue here. Oh, he retired. Yeah, right. Oh, he retired. Of course, I gotta realize I'm talking to the same dumbass fan base that back in 2006, halfway through the season, thought Rex Grossman was the freaking league MVP. Same fan base that thinks that Ryan Pace should have done such a bad job as a general manager that he should be promoted to team president, because that's how things work. Well, ironically enough, that is how they work in the corporate world. You promote mediocrity because people like them and they get along and they're nice and they're pretty to look at. You could just imagine how Virginia's cunt gets in the cobweb cocked position thinking about Ryan Pace's pretty boy face. Seriously. I mean, that's all it could be, because it's clearly not based off of accomplishments. Are any of you surprised at the news that Nagy and Pace are going to be back next year? I'm not. Shouldn't be. I did a video weeks ago talking about these clowns should be fired. What are you waiting for? And once they started winning a couple of games here at the end, I know George and Ted are looking at it like, oh, we don't know what the fuck we're doing, Ted. Well, if we fire, that means we gotta pay out Ryan Pace's contract for a year, and he's not here, and then we got Matt Nagy for 2 years on the books, and well, that's 2 years we got to pay for a coach who's not here. We just can't afford that in this economy, George.
Well, that sounds pretty good to me. I mean, I think we should think about, trying to win one for Moms before she croaks. Maybe we should go hire a competent general manager and a competent head coach.
No, here's the thing, George. We don't know what the fuck we're doing. So I'm afraid of making those types of key decisions. We've already made these decisions a few years ago, so why don't we just keep them around for another year?
Well, I like your thinking, Ted. You save money, and we get stability. We get consistency. They might not be 12-4, but they're not going to be 4-12.
That's a pretty good one. You could take that joke to the bank, and I love the bank because I'm a bean-counting dumb piece of shit.
That you are, but I love you, by God. 22 years and counting.
That's pretty much it! If you wonder what those conversations with George McCaskey and Ted Phillips sound like, you basically got it. Two guys leading a football organization whistling Strangers in Paradise because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Rewarding mediocrity because that's what they do. The mediocrity, the McCaskey way, continues yet again. You got teams firing coaches that won Super Bowls. The Bears can't part ways with a guy that's went 8-8 2 straight years. They can't part ways with a general manager because he's pretty and nice, and he did other good things that don't matter as much with the organization and the facilities. That's been to the playoffs twice in 6 years, 0 playoff wins, and oh, by the way, one incredibly notable historical botch when it came to his big quarterback decision in the draft. And we're running it back, and at this point in time, you gotta ask yourself, well, if they feel like Ryan Pace was good enough at his job to stay another year, and Matt Nagy was good enough to stay at his job another year, then why wouldn't Mitchell Trubisky be back? Why wouldn't Trubisky be back? Why wouldn't you run it back again? What's the justification or logic? If one of these ass clowns stays, then they all might as well all stay. Let them all go down in flames together. What truly frightens me about this, now you're going to talk about defensive coordinators. You know what they're going to do? They're going to promote somebody like Jay Rodgers from internally. Not because it's the right decision, not because that person's clearly qualified for the job. Well, you know, George, we could promote him and pay him only 60% of the market value for a defensive coordinator position.
Well, that's like 40% savings. So we get the same quality of performance for only 60% of the cost. Sounds pretty good to me.
Well, nobody ever said anything about the actual level of performance, but you got the 60% of cost right, and that's what we care about here most, right? Isn't that right, George?
Well, you know what? You're absolutely right.
And yes, George McCaskey probably in those conversations sounds like a drunk-ass goofy. They're my voices, and I'll do them how I want. And I believe them to be true, okay?
You?
So now, you're going to let great value Jerry Angelo in Ryan Pace, and that's what he is. Like, he doesn't even sniff Jerry Angelo's jock. And a lot of you want to shit on Angelo. Deservedly so, mind you. But Jerry Angelo built contenders in 2 different iterations of a contender. And one of those iterations of a contender went to a Super Bowl after Tommy Harris and Mike Brown were out with injury that had Sexy Rexy as their quarterback. And the other contender had Jay frickin' Cutler as their quarterback. He did that. By his 6th season, the Bears were making the Super Bowl. In Ryan Pace's 6th season, they're 8-8 and sliding into the back door of the playoffs after getting boat raced twice by Green Bay in the regular season. So now you've tied yourself to a failed general manager for another year, which means this offseason could lead to even more desperation unless you give him a contract extension.
Well, you know, Ted, I gotta ask you, what would it look like if we added a year to Ryan Pace's contract? Because Momsies really likes him.
Well, you know, I don't think the fans would really like that much, but they're kind of dumb. They'll come to the games anyways. But Ryan Pace will cost us less because he'll give us the old Virginia discount, if you know what I mean. A nudge, nudge. Wink, wink.
Well, I sure do. I think that'd be pretty good because that way the contracts between Nagy and Pace kind of line up.
I mean, what else can you say? Now you're either going to let Ryan Pace draft a quarterback and probably get it wrong. He's made multiple incorrect decisions at the quarterback position. Why would you trust him to finally magically figure it out and get it right? Or he drafts a quarterback that leads to him getting an extension because it buys him more time, which will cause even more damage. Or he drafts a quarterback that you saddle the next regime with, and why the hell would anybody want to come to that situation? Or he does nothing at quarterback and you run everything back and make sure every week that you protect Tyler Brady on the practice squad. So that way you can make other desperate moves that deplete what little salary cap space you have and put your future cap space even more in limbo, just like you did this past offseason. Might as well run that back again, right? Or worst of all, you're going to get some type of dumb dick desperate move for a quarterback in the offseason because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing, which means they're going to trade for somebody else's quarterback that's only been in the league 3 years. Oh, Sam Darnold, here you come. Well, he's got a fifth-year option. It could be picked up, and you get 2 years at a relatively low cost. Not going to cost us much.
You know, Ted, you're a genius, by God. That's why I've kept you here 22 seasons. It's about way more than the most important thing, which is winning the Super Bowl, obviously. It's about money and making middling amounts of money when we can make more, because that's safe and comfortable. And we're afraid to make those big decisions because we don't know what we're doing.
Well, it's not about what you do. It's about who you know. It's the Ted Phillips philosophy. So you let him go trade for a Sam Darnold. Great. We've been down this path before. Trade for another team's former first-round pick at quarterback after 3 years. Well, at least the last time this organization did it, and they gave up the farm, at least that kid had thrown for 4,000 yards in a season. Darnold hasn't done that. Can't even play 16 games in a season. But yeah, let's get somebody else's retread to fix it. Or worse off, you're going to try and rectify the mistake that you made in 2017 when you didn't draft either Mahomes or Watson by now having to give up the fucking farm to go trade for Deshaun Watson. And at that point in time, if you're making that big move to trade for that quarterback from that draft class, then why would Ryan Pace still have a job? And all the while, what would you do? Further constrict your salary cap even more, not to mention depleting what little draft pick capital you actually have for the next few years. So you're either damning the organization under Pace to even more Ryan Pace, which is a disaster, or damning this organization to life after Pace, taking years to recover from, which is also a total unmitigated disaster. And we're allowing Ted Phillips all the while, 22 seasons, 6 playoff appearances, no championships. At least Michael McCaskey got less time and accomplished way more. And everybody acknowledges and knows that Michael McCaskey sucked at his job. He accomplished more, way more, in less time. And just because he embarrassed good old momsies with that Dave McGinnis debacle in '99 that led to the Dick Duran era, you reassigned him and put Ted Phillips in his place. Well, how many times has this Bears organization embarrassed you on the field in the past couple of decades? Isn't it embarrassing getting boat raced twice every year by the Packers? Isn't it embarrassing getting boat raced in the playoffs? Isn't it embarrassing to be celebrating an 8-8 team making the playoffs? Isn't it embarrassing to know that it's been 3.5 decades since your team last won a Super Bowl? Isn't it embarrassing to know that it's been a decade and a half since your team even last made the Super Bowl, and those are the only 2 Super Bowl appearances that organization's made in 50 plus years? Gotta give it to George and Ted. They pulled a fast one on us. Stupid us, thinking we cared. We think they cared. They don't care.
Well, you know, Ted, I think it's season's over now. Let's go. You want to go fishing?
Yeah, could go fishing, or we could just go to a seafood restaurant. I've got a 2-for-1 meal voucher here. Should we use that?
Well, I think so. Let's go there.
How could anyone defend this? You know where this is going. They're either running it back with everybody, or you're getting desperate changes and desperate moves, and you already got those desperate changes and desperate moves last year, and how'd that work out? You saw the results this season, so you wanted to double it back and do it again?
I'm George McCaskey.
Well, I'm Ted Phillips, and this is more mediocre Bears football coming at you. It's a great value NFL story. 90% of the cost, 50% of the results.
Well, it's better than 30% of the results.
Ah! I wish you could launch this entire team and their stupid stadium and stupid Hallis Hall into Lake Michigan and it drowns forever! It can't be that difficult to realize just how bad things are. And you're in the worst possible spot. You've literally broken even 8-8 the last 2 years. You haven't sucked bad enough to be reborn like a phoenix. You haven't been good enough to be a contender, so what the hell are you doing other than playing tiddly dicks and wasting everybody's frickin' time? Yeah. That's it. We knew this was coming, guys. Shouldn't surprise any of us. Frankly, it shouldn't even disappoint any of us. We should be disappointed in ourselves for expecting anything different. And those of you that will continue to go to these games next year, because you know you will, the first chance they allow fans back, you'll go. Because this is the stupidity is genetic. It's generational. You'll go and be like, well, I want to be a true blue supporter, and then eventually figure it out. Well, assholes, they never figure it out! The true definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and 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 over again and expecting the results to be any different. You got 22 years of bean counting Ted. How many more do you need? You got 3 years of numbskull Nagy. How much more incompetence on the offensive end do you really need to watch? You've gotten 6 years of Putz Boy Pace. How many more do you really need? When you think that this organization might truly give a shit and want to play big boy football, they just decide they're going to give you more Bears football.